I'm an associate professor in the Department of Extension at Ohio State University, and I serve as a state level field specialist in youth nutrition and wellness. And so in this role, I do a lot of teaching out in the community. And I really love working with community members and community organizations on creating healthier food environments, and then also food and nutrition education to help increase food and nutrition knowledge and improve behaviors and just make, eating more healthy and more fun for all of us. So as part of that, I love to get feedback from community members, from participants. So please reach out to me at this email, smathers.14@osu.edu with any further questions or feedback or, ideas. That said, I got a really good question after the last presentation that was focused on grocery shopping. And it said, I think many of the real challenges of eating on a limited budget are around cooking and preparing meals. It's so much easier to buy prepared food that tends to be more expensive. And then the question, which I really love, was how can families experiment with different types of foods? So that's what we're going to be looking at today, but through my sharing of how I make low-cost food purchases stretch. But along with that, I'd like to hear from all of you. I do have a few poll questions, as Carolyn said, and this is to get us started thinking about what has the experience been like for each of us. And please just answer these, just be honest. The responses are completely anonymous. We don't see which individuals respond, we only see the responses as a full group. So thinking about the last 12 months. So the first poll question we'll be thinking about the last 12 months. Have you spent a lot more on food than you used to? So is that question up? There we go. Okay. All right. For a while, it was 100%. Yeah. So thinking about the past year, and it looks like we've got, great, thanks. Everybody has responded. Oh, we're just missing 5 more people, but we've got 35 responses. And okay, we're at 87%. I think that's good. So and I'm just going to jot down. So that was, we got one more, 31 out of 36. So yes, you've spent a lot more. And the data support that food prices increased at least 11% last year. We for the almost all of us were spending a lot more on food than we used to. For some of us, we're still spending the same, but that means we're buying less. So next question is, thanks for answering that one. And that's 33 out of 38. The next question is, in the last 12 months, have you struggled to provide healthy meals for your family because of the cost of food? This is always a really interesting question. So we've got 44 potential responses. We've got 39 in so far, 40, 41. It's running about 14, 27. So about 2/3 are saying haven't really struggled to provide healthy meals because of the cost of healthy food, or just really maybe here just to learn more. But this is what we see in surveys, even among people who receive SNAP assistance who are on food stamps, that about 4 in 10 say they struggle to provide healthy meals because of the cost, and then others say that it's because of other factors. So, all right, great, 15 and 27. Let's go to the next question. So in the last 12 months, have you worried about whether your food would run out before you got money to buy more? And again, this is completely anonymous. It's just, we're only seeing the group responses. Okay. 40 of the 45, almost there. Have you worried about whether your food would run out before you got money to buy more? Okay. We're almost to 100%. So what we're seeing here is that, about 1 in 5 have said that the cost of food is such a concern, that it may be the case that they run out before there's money to buy more. So that's what we see. We've been seeing for quite a while, and we can end the polls that for many, this is just a very, very stressful and critical issue, because there's just not enough resources to stretch. Yeah, we can take the next slide. Those of you who read my bio know that I have 2 master's degrees, and that I'm speaking today largely on the voice of experience. What started with a 1-week challenge to try to just for 1 week eat on a low budget of $1.50 per meal transitioned into the decision to make this a lifestyle in my household. And so from the beginning of 2018 through mid 2022, our household budget was $1.50 per meal per person. Last summer, with the food inflation the inflation in food prices that we were seeing last year in 2022, I kept trying to stretch and stretch more and more. I found that I was buying fewer and fewer protein items. I found that the inventory, the stock that I have in my kitchen and my refrigerator and my freezer was dwindling. And so it just came to the point where I couldn't stretch it anymore. And we increased it to $1.80 per meal per person in the fall, and then decided just to go with the $2 per meal beginning in 2023. And our goal is to stay with that $2 per meal at least through the end of this year, if not longer. The good news is that even in just the first few food purchases of 2023, with that $2 a meal budget, we're starting to see our inventory increase. We're starting to see more food stay on the shelves, and we're starting to build back a little, as well as that $2 per meal budget, feeding us good meals. We are adding to our reserves a little bit. So I always like, if you've heard my presentations before, I like to start with a little bit of background. The first is that I'm not a registered dietitian, and as such, I don't give nutritional advice. I absolutely recognize that there are numerous factors involved in buying food, providing healthy meals, and I don't intend to downplay or dismiss those in any way. And that what I'm talking about is that a healthy diet for $6 a day per person in Columbus, Ohio is completely possible when you're looking at the cost of the food. And then you might find it helpful, if you haven't seen the previous webinars, to check out those links that Carolyn provided. So my hope is that people are rethinking that common refrain that, of course we can't eat well, healthy foods are too expensive. There's many educators, many sources out there that help us to think about like what individual foods are relatively low cost, or what would be a low cost meal. And I think what I bring to this discussion is that I'm documenting the experience for year after year. I'm showing that grocery purchase after grocery purchase after grocery purchase, it's possible to not just afford healthy meals, but to really enjoy healthy meals, to enjoy a range of healthy, delicious meals. And always like to just start with a little description of how do we know how much our meals cost? How do we know that what the price per meal is? And I don't break it down and track it for every single item on every single plate. That would just be too much work. So what we do is try to target how much we'll spend at the grocery store for a purchase. And then once we know how much we spent, divide that by how much we want our meals to cost. So what we're going to be talking about today is a purchase that totaled $140 divided by 2. That's 70 target meals. So I'll be showing you 70 meals that were created and consumed from the time of that grocery purchase. I want you to take a quick look at the photo on the right. I do kind of a visual inventory of what's on hand before I go shopping. So this is all the food that was left before the shopping trip on January 30th. So just the food items in this cupboard, just the things that were pulled out of these are all the foods that were in the refrigerator and freezer on the counter. So this is all I had to work with in addition to the purchase that you'll see. And my grocery purchase just in general really are focused on buying fresh fruits and vegetables, whole foods, foods that are minimally processed, a range of grains, some great whole grain products, some organic, and a range of proteins. You'll see chicken breast here, you'll see sausages, you'll see a number of dairy sources of protein and eggs. And you can see there's not many highly processed foods here. And here's that $140. Here's what $140 got me at the end of January. So take a look, kind of do a visual scan, put in the chat if there's anything that stands out about this, if there's any questions that you have. I'm just going to point out a few things that you'll want to take note of before we look at the actual meals that was prepared. So one of them, for example, is on the upper right. There's 2 loaves of bread. That's a big loaf of sourdough and organic multigrain. So half of each of those loaves went directly in the freezer, and that before the bread was put away. But that way I had, a couple of different kinds of bread, and they lasted throughout the 70 meals. Take a look at the upper left. There's a big box of spring mix, so organic salad mix. We're going to come back to that and how that got used. There's a big package of chicken breast in the forefront. Those chicken breasts were cut in half, and most of them were frozen right away before they even went in the refrigerator. And then I want you to look at the tracking, the totaling that I did of the cost. This was one of the weeks that I actually shopped at more than one store. There were a few specialty items that I wanted to get that I couldn't get at just one store. And so you see a few different receipts there. And then just I had to make a correction to the total because I had forgotten one of the receipts, the $10 that went towards the Starbucks coffee did make it go from 130 to 140. And so the total meals, as I said, was 70 meals. And you can see there that's all the food that I purchased for the 140. So were there any questions about that before we move on?
There are a few questions or comments.
Okay.
Was only the meats on the table, the bacon and the chicken?
I think that's the only meat per se this time. There's pepperoni in the freezer. I know that there's ham in the freezer at this point. So there were other meats available that I had previously. I know you couldn't maybe see that clearly in that photo before. And then there's numerous cans of beans, and there's peanut butter, and there's cheese, and there's Greek yogurt, which is high in protein. So there are other non-meat sources of protein here. Other questions? People have some of their recommend low cost grain alternatives. Well, maybe hopefully get to that later. Okay, so I think I hit most of the questions on this.
One comment just came through.
Okay.
Is your inventory only considering adults or also children in your households? Kids consume quite a lot of milk. That adds
Okay.
up quickly.
Yes. I don't have children in my household now. We're going to get to a slide later on that looks at the Thrifty food plan, and that's an acknowledgement of there's not a one size fits all to this. We definitely in estimating the cost per meal per person have to take into consideration an individual's gender and age is primarily what they base the nutritional requirements on. So yeah, when we get to that slide, take a look at, for your child, based on gender and age, what the dollar amount would be for that individual. It's interesting, like it ranges between about $250 and $350 right now, when they estimate the actual cost of foods that it would take to provide a healthy, to provide to an individual. And that's of any age, any gender. It's kind of right between $250 and $350. We'll take a look at that. And mine's coming in at $2. So you may need to spend, $2, $3, a little more per meal. But this is to get you thinking about, what kind of foods do you want to focus on to keep your budget very low? Hopefully that helps. All right, and my slide is not advancing. Sorry, just going to take a quick, I kind of get locked here for some reason. And so I'm going to do a quick advance manually, and then come right back to my next slide. So here we go. So if you watched the webinar on grocery shopping, you know that I use an Excel spreadsheet for my grocery list. I've got most of the prices and most of the items I commonly purchase are pre-populated, and I just have a no, I'm not going to buy it, and a yes, I plan to buy it column. And then I can go back afterwards. If I don't always go back afterwards, but in this case for the presentation, I went back and put in all the actual prices of all the items I actually bought. There are, as I said, there's a couple of lines there for other stores, just so that I could, capture everything on one page. But I love working with the spreadsheet because it allows me to make a pretty good estimate before I go to the store, do some swapping while I'm at the store, and then figure out afterwards, well, how much did I spend on the different categories? And here you can see it's about a third on fruits and vegetables. It's about a third on proteins. And then the other third is from the grains, dairies, and miscellaneous. You have this on the slides. So if you want to go back and really look specifically at what was included and how much it cost, hopefully that'll be helpful to you. I always like to share this slide. That's it's what I call the building blocks of healthy meals. These are the foods that we buy. We choose from a range of grains. There was a question about grains before. Hopefully this will help a little bit. These are the protein items that we like to buy, and it's a pretty good range. Our vegetables are primarily fresh, and we do buy a number of things frozen that helps stretch out our inventory throughout that second week of the meal preparation. And then fruit, it's always fresh. We don't include any fruit juices in this. And then we will occasionally have a bag of frozen fruit to again extend our choices out into a second week. But as you can see, we'll buy a variety of sauces. We have some seasonings. We have some spices, but not a lot. Chili powder, cumin, cayenne, oregano, garlic, Italian seasoning, cinnamon, and curry are pretty much it. And then some oils and vinegars and a couple condiments. We do get some chips and sweet treats, but you can see here how if you combine these items, you come up with really a pretty wide variety of meal choices. And before I go on to show you, the pictures and the list of what we ate, I just want to say that the title of this webinar was Meal Creation for a reason. I'm often asked to give presentations about meal preparation, meal planning. And it kind of surprises people to know that we don't actually plan out what meals we're going to eat on which days, or which exact meals we're going to have ahead of a given purchase. We buy the building blocks and we create healthy meals as we go, as opposed to like following a set plan. We're busy. We have schedules that change a lot. We have unknowns. We don't know when work or some other thing is going to go real late into the day, when we might have to leave the house for a meeting, when a meeting will get canceled. Like having things ready to put together really delicious meals, but not being tied to a set plan, really helps us to use up all the food that we purchase without, like, oh, well, we had those ingredients for that thing, but we never made it. And so the ingredients go to waste. And hopefully that'll become a little clearer as we go through the next slides. So that $140 provided 70 meals between this time period, right? January 30th to yesterday. And when you look at the breakfasts, for example, you can see that there's not a lot of recipes required, and that we could decide that morning what we wanted. So breakfast number one was some French toast. And then there are some breakfasts that are eggs and toast and bacon. And on the cold mornings, we had oatmeal and threw in some cut up berries and toasted some pecans in the toaster oven, which are amazing when you toast them a little bit. And that's a great breakfast. And it's, it takes what, two minutes to make that oatmeal, and per serving, it's probably running around 11 cents per serving now. So these are really delicious, easy, low cost breakfasts. There's an attempt at an omelet in the lower left, but that used up a lot of vegetables. We had small amounts of some vegetables, throw that in with some cheese. On the center, in the lower, on the bottom row, we had some fajitas the night before, and we mixed up some homemade guacamole, and that guacamole, half of it went on to toast the next morning for avocado toast. Really delicious. And then of course, a lot of breakfasts are quick. Pour some whole grain cereal in a bowl and either have yogurt or milk, with that. And then the last breakfast, one of the last breakfasts we had, we pulled out that frozen mango. So whereas it would be difficult to actually show 23 breakfasts in photos. It was easy to look at 6, but it would be hard to make sense of 23. What I did here was to make some tables of the actual meals that we had that added up to those 70 meals. So, and I tried to group by protein and the fruit and vegetable and the grain that was included in each. So you can see this is the pattern. This is these are the main things that went into every single one of our breakfasts during that time. So we had eggs, we had Greek yogurt and granola, we had oatmeal and granola, we had quite a variety. You can see how the fruit changed up every day to keep it interesting. Pineapple, apples, strawberries, blueberries, grapes, pineapple, banana, strawberries, blueberries. It just was, they lasted, the fruit that we bought lasted, well into the 23 breakfasts. And then at the end, as I said, we pulled out the frozen. So there is actually still some really great pineapple available. When you look at lunches, it's same kind of thing, not a lot of recipes being used to put those lunches together, although I will talk about how we make our homemade chili. Chili takes me about 12 to 15 minutes from when I pull the ingredients out and open the cans to when it's in the bowl. And you know, you can make various amounts and have it to reheat. So here's a chili lunch. Here's you know, peanut butter sandwiches, which travel well and are nice quiet meals to eat on the go, or if you're at a meeting. And then there's a lasagna lunch that was just, you know, a slice of lasagna pulled out and reheated. There's BLT sandwiches, there's tuna salad sandwiches, egg salad sandwiches. Like, we eat a nice variety of lunches. I want to point out a couple of things to look for. We're going to talk later about helping to make the foods look plentiful and appealing. You know, when you think about, you sit down to a restaurant, you order a plate of food and they bring in and it looks amazing, right? They've really kind of almost styled it on the plate. We always put together our meals over on the counter and bring them to the table plated. So that's the amount we're going to eat. There's no seconds, there's no other food. It's just the plated meal. So in some cases, we intentionally use like somewhat smaller meals to make the portions look bigger, like somewhat smaller plates to make the portions look bigger. What you're seeing here though, the white plates on the bottom, those are full-size plates. Those are nice big plates and we fill them up. We do like to use the small bowls to hold individual items, and it just helps to pack on more of those flavors. With you can see in the lower right, we've got some baked beans. We get put a nice serving of that. It helps control the portion size of the beans, and it also just keeps them separate from everything else. The other thing to look at is that if you can see, by and large, I try to put either 3 items on a plate or 5 items on a plate, because aesthetically we know that things are just more pleasing when they're in an odd number. And so that's just something I've become accustomed to doing, and it's just kind of second nature. But if you just kind of glance, you see the main 3 things or main 5 things. And then here again is that list of what was prepared for the lunches. There's the cheeses, chili with cheese and peanut butter, lasagna, all the sandwiches that I listed out. Quite a variety of, oftentimes it's fruit, because fruit is faster with a lunch, but we also include a lot of vegetables there. And then when it comes to dinner, same kind of thing. Not a lot of recipes used to create the meal when we decide what to make. We often start with a look at what vegetables are available, what vegetables need to be eaten up, and what vegetables do we feel like eating? What do we have available? And then we might say, okay, well, let's add chicken and rice to that and make a stir fry with our stir fry sauce, or we have a variety of certain vegetables that would be great with Italian seasoning. Let's cook up some spaghetti and put some pasta sauce and some protein with that. Or you see the fajitas on the lower left, and then the middle one on the bottom is just the ham pulled out of the freezer and heated up in a pan. And you know, the flavors that are with the ham are what we often think of for holiday meals, but certainly you could eat that any day and it's a low-cost meal. And then the one on the lower right was a frozen meal of haddock, and so it's a fish and chips, and I added roasted vegetables, because once you're heating the oven up to 425 and you're going to have it on for 20 or 25 minutes, you might as well put some vegetables on that tray and balance out your plate. And then here's the list of dinners. So started off with grilled ham and cheese, went to the stir fry, added some lasagna meals. There was probably a quick, let's just heat up some chili for dinner, the chicken fajitas, the ham, BLTs, the haddock, a pepperoni pizza that had a lot of added vegetables and extra cheese added to it. And then finally, our Valentine dinner, which you'll get to see, which was spaghetti and garlic toast. So when it comes to meal creation, my recommendation is to think with what you want the plate to look like in mind. Think again about what do you have on hand? What flavors does your family love? Pick a vegetable that each person really likes. Like always want to have a vegetable that is going to be a winner. Rice, pasta, bread, quinoa, and then top it with some kind of protein. And it can be a meat or egg, poultry, or a plant-based protein, which is often like a grain and legume, grain and bean combination would provide a complete protein with that, without being plant-based. Now, I understand that not everyone is ready necessarily to go freestyle, and to work completely without recipes. And so I recommend two websites. These are awesome. The first is Celebrate Your Plate, and the second is Food Hero. Celebrate Your Plate was created right here at Ohio State University by our community nutrition programs, the SNAP Ed program and the FNEP program, in partnership with state agencies and community members. It contains all kinds of tips on how to save money on your food budget, as well as these are contemporary recipes. These are recently taste tested. These are real winners when it comes to meals that you can prepare using the kind of building blocks that I showed that I purchased with on my low budget. What I love about Celebrate Your Plate and Food Hero are that it's so searchable. Like you can look at their whole recipe list just with photos. You can choose what jumps out at you, or say you've got some zucchini in your refrigerator you really should start using up. You can put zucchini in that search recipes and it'll pull up all the recipes there that have zucchini in them. So it's a real time saver. It's the same with the Food Hero from Oregon State University. A lot of the same great concepts that are in Celebrate Your Plate, along with things like you can search by 30 minutes or less. You can search by kid approved meals. What I love about this one is you can not only put in, I want recipes with zucchini, but you could search, they have a feature where it does not contain. So if you need recipes that don't have onions in them, you can use those search terms and it'll come up with a listing with photos of what the meal would look like and what it would require. So those are great go-to websites for easy to make, low-cost recipes using those building blocks. And again, there's no getting away from size matters, right? Portion size matters. There's the two basic concepts of saving on our grocery purchases are, in order to spend less, you got to buy less. And if you're going for healthier meals, then buying less is probably buying less of the processed foods. And then no matter what you buy, you got to control the portions. It's the only way to keep your spending down to a very, very low amount and still be providing healthy meals. So I'm often asked, like, okay, this works for you and your family because you must have all kinds of fancy equipment and it really, all the nice kitchenware, and you probably, you have a lot more cooking skills than other people. And I'm here to tell you, I don't have a lot of equipment, and I don't consider myself to have a lot of cooking skills. I have a stove, an oven, a toaster oven, a microwave, and a coffee maker. And that's all I use to make my meals. I don't have an air fryer. I don't have any of the other fancy stuff. Like, that's all I use. And then I got to thinking, well, what are the skills that I really depend on to make those meals that I just showed you? And it comes down to this, right? So you got to be able to cut up your fruit and vegetables. You're going to buy raw. You got to know how to get them into the size you want. After that, you got to be able to stir fry, saute, and roast vegetables. So stir fry, of course, cooking them at a relatively high temperature, and you got to stir them a lot so they don't burn and they cook evenly. And saute, you're throwing some, maybe onions, garlic, peppers into some oil, and stirring those onions around so they go from white to clear. And then roasting vegetables, right? Roasting is like the best thing you can do with a vegetable, because you're actually caramelizing. You're actually adding sweetness to that vegetable. You're cooking it at a pretty high temperature. After you toss it in some oil and maybe some salt and pepper, or maybe some other spices. And so that vegetable is getting sweeter and it's getting a little crispy on the outside and staying tender on the inside. And so you'll want to get yourself a roasting guide, something like what I have shared here on this slide. Beyond that, got to be able to cook rice and other grains like quinoa. I really recommend like my number one recommendation for a skill for cooking meat or poultry would be poaching chicken breast. So those chicken breasts that I froze, they take about 2 minutes to defrost in the microwave. And after that, they get poached in a little bit of water. So poaching is easy. It is what it is you're covering pieces of chicken with water and you're letting them simmer. And it usually takes about 10 minutes once it's simmering, once it's boiling, for that chicken to cook through. The advantages are that it cooks the chicken gently, it avoids overcooking, and then you've got this beautiful piece of chicken that you can shred up and put taco seasoning on, or you can chop it up and make strips for fajitas. You can make cubes and toss it into stir fry. You can slice it thin and put it on sandwiches. Like you've got all wonderful chicken to work with. And it's just so easy because it's sitting in the pan for 10 minutes while you're doing other things. And then finally, you got to be able to open cans and jars because that's how I do a lot of my sauces. I just open them up and pour them in. Running a little close on time, so I'm just going to quickly go through these are some of my breakfast favorites, as I mentioned. Here's the granola recipe. Take a screenshot, get the slides. Try this. Let me know how you like it. It's a very simple list of basic ingredients. It takes 25, 30 minutes. It's real quick to whip up. And then it's about 25 minutes in the oven. But delicious granola, and you can add nuts or not add nuts. You can add fruit, I suppose, dry fruit. But enjoy. And it's very low, very, very low cost compared to store-bought granola. In terms of salads, last time we talked about grocery shopping, we were saying that dressings are one of the items that will overwhelm you in the store, right? There are literally over 100 types of salad dressing. And so I recommend that you keep only 2 and splurge on them. You get the best salad dressing that you can think of. You get the salad dressing for you that turns your salad greens and your vegetables into a party in that bowl. Like, don't bother with the cheap blah, dressings. Don't even give them shelf space in your refrigerator. You get the best 2 dressings you can, so you really love eating your salads. And that will encourage you to you got to finish one up before you can get another flavor. So keep oil and vinegar, oil and red wine vinegar, I recommend. So you can always be making an additional dressing or a vinaigrette, and then keep mayonnaise and mustard for making that kind of mayonnaise-based salads. So then you're going to toss those dressings on things like, salad greens and spinaches and chunks of, summer, a nice fresh tomato and onion and cucumber. Or you're going to put the vinaigrette on like black beans and tomatoes and avocado. Some people know that as cowboy caviar. And then those mayonnaise-based recipes help you to make those sandwiches like the egg salad and tuna salad and chicken salad and potato salad. But you'll find all those recipes in Food Hero and Celebrate Your Plate. Here's just a picture of when it was lunchtime, we pulled out ingredients. We thought, oh, here's ingredients we have. We've got tuna, we've got that mayo and mustard. We like to have pickles and celery in our salad and a little bit of boiled egg. And so there really wasn't a recipe used for this, though you could if you wanted to get exact proportions, but we basically put in, mayonnaise until the stuff is coated and then add a little mustard, and it's delicious, right? It goes on toast, and you add some lettuce and tomato and have some chips and fruit with that, and you've got a meal. And here's those chicken fajitas, and the chicken I talked about defrosting and poaching and then just chopping up and throwing with the fajitas. We wedged some sweet potatoes, tossed them in oil, put that salt and pepper on, put them in the oven and roasted them, and they're delicious. We had some leftover rice, put a little lime in there for, like a lime cilantro rice kind of thing, and our fresh guacamole, and it made a great meal. Here's the chili. If you look at the upper middle, here's the ingredients. Pulled out some, I usually like to start with some onion and pepper. There's actually some cubed zucchini in that initial step on the upper right. And then, like I said, I open up 2 cans of tomatoes, a can of beans, and if I have corn, I put it in, and then I sprinkle in the pre-mixed chili seasoning, and in like 12 to 15 minutes, there's chili in the bowl. You could add meat, certainly, but we use cheese as our protein. Here's a couple of those stir fries that I talked about. Let me see, down to the last couple of minutes. So the real trick there is to really get good at knowing what size to cut your vegetables and which vegetables to put in first. You put in your carrots and garlic and onions because they're sturdiest, and then you go to the less sturdy from there. I do make meatless meals, and this is, I'm just going to give Sharon Palmer, rd.com, a shout out here. If you are really into plant-based meals, check out that website. Here is a start to finish lasagna. And I said, you want to take note of that spring mix. The recipe actually calls for Swiss chard, or you can put spinach in it. And I pulled the Swiss chard and spinach out of my spring mix rather than going to, buying a whole separate supply of that. And it's got a couple layers of greens, and there's pecans in this that make it almost taste and feel like it's got meat in it, but it doesn't. So it's a really great recipe to know about. Back to the concept of overchoice that we talked about when grocery shopping. There's almost too many choices when we go to the really big grocery stores. They become overwhelming, and our choices become less and less satisfying. And that can happen in our houses too. And so we want to try to, keep the necessities for your meals very reasonable. And when I go into some people's houses and their pantries look like this, I think, how in the world do you ever decide what to make? Whereas, ours are our ingredients are so, it's so clear what we have, and it's all things that we love, and it's all things like we buy what we need, and we need what we buy. Again, we want to try to make it appetizing. And so try to add some color contrast, try to lay it out. These are the concepts I talked about in keeping your budget low. I mentioned the Thrifty food plan, and that if you go online and you just look for the average cost of food in the US, they'll have a chart with the most recent estimates that they've made. And so here again, look at the age and the gender of your child or of those in your household. That's what you're looking at here was the actual costs of food, and then an estimate for the nutritional needs of individuals. So again, it came out to about $250 to $350 per meal, depending on age and gender. Just a reminder that in order to achieve healthy meals at the cost of a Thrifty food plan, the new formulation, the reevaluation of the Thrifty food plan does recognize that some planning and at home preparation is needed. And I'm just going to end with this image, because I'm always asked, like, oh, does your husband go along with this? Like, does he like it? Can he do the food shopping? Does he do the meal prep? And the answer to all those things is a resounding yes. And in fact, this was the spaghetti dinner that he cooked on Valentine's night, and even cut the pepperoni into little hearts. So how sweet is that? And with that, I'll just end it and hope